One in five suffer.
Erase the stigma.
Brain difference is not a crime.
Mental health isn't just your problem.
It's our problem.
And now, Mental Health Mondays with Marla and Dave.
Welcome to Mental Health Mondays. I don't
Mondays.
think my mic is on.
It's
Tony.
on there,
Okay.
sweetie.
I can't hear myself, so.
Well, sweetie over there, her name is Marla, and my name is Dave.
Yes.
We want to remind you or let you know that today's show is brought to you by the Kiloby Center for Recovery, the Mindful Revolution in Addiction Treatment, and the Natural Rest House Detox Residential Center.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So I'm so sorry. I'm having technical difficulty. I couldn't hear myself. I'm shorting in and out.
Well, it's the end of the month, so we know what happens at the end of the month.
At the end of the month, it's Mental Health Monday. At the end of the month, we have our mindfulness expert, Scott
Yes.
Kellerby, with us. We look forward to it. First of all, I've learned to look forward to Mondays, but I especially look forward to the Mondays when Scott's going to be joining us.
Yes,
Because
that
he
is right.
imparts nuggets and knowledge that we can use, that we have affected in our own lives.
And he always brings Scott's List.
Scott's List. We have labeled it Scott's List.
Yes, for those of you who don't know, Scott Kellerby is an internationally recognized and sought-after author, teacher, and speaker on the subject of mindfulness and non-dual wisdom as it applies to addiction and other mental illnesses or brain differences, as we like to call it. Scott is the founder of the Living Inquiries community and the founder and CEO of the Kiloby Center for Recovery, located in the beautiful Palm Springs area of California.
And like Dave says, there's a brand new Scott's List this week. So what to expect and what you should do when your loved one decides to seek mental help.
That's what the list is all about this week. What you should expect and what you should do when a loved one decides to seek mental health help.
Can I remind everybody that you can actually literally call 866-545-6295 or email the Kiloby Center to get your free tips.
That's right. And we will be right back with Scott Kellerby.
Help someone who is struggling by supporting the National Alliance on Mental Illness and be a part of the NAMI effect. Hope starts with you.
Right off the bat, I want to remind everybody, as I did when we were literally coming into our first segment with Scott, that please, for the viewers, call 866-545-6295, or you can email info@kilobycenter.com.
That's right.
To get your free tips, and they have been instrumental every month. And so
when you call or email, make sure that you mention that you heard about Scott's List and your tips for what you should do and what you should expect when your loved one seeks mental health help.
And with no further ado,
yes, we have the great Scott Kellerby.
Thank you, Marla and Dave, for having me again.
Thanks for coming. Well, Scott, we always seem to have so much to say. Hey, it's a play on words in such a short time. So let's jump right into our discussion about family members seeking help and how we should and what we should expect and how we should respond. That brings us right to your new list, Scott's List, dealing with such things. So the first one that you said was their treatment process takes time. Be prepared for the long haul. Nobody knows how long it will take. Everyone's journey is different. Discuss that for us, Scott.
Well, there was actually a recent study on trauma that said therapists were treating trauma sometimes in just a few weeks, and the study said you have to do like 6 months of that to really make a dent in it. So the science is coming out to say that now, but just based on the experience of being in this field, well, the Surgeon General said, stay in treatment a while. There are things coming out that are telling us longer term treatment is more helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So and when they say things like a while, what does a while actually mean?
Mm-hmm. I think it's dependent on each person's case, right? And that's where mental health and brain difference treatment is going, is case by case, more customized. There in California, it's really becoming the way that we do things slowly. Yeah. It's taking time to change because there've been some cookie cutter things that we've done, but now we're starting to meet people in find out in the beginning what's going on with them and what kind of care they need, and not even predicting how long it will take until we work with the person and find out how it's going, which actually makes much more sense than putting a number on it in the beginning when you haven't really met and worked with the person.
Now, is that different? Is that different, right, Marla? Let me just say this. Is that different for someone dealing with a dual diagnosis? So a lot of times I've heard that you can actually get the body off of drugs really quickly. Rather quickly, a lot faster than you can the mind, and the mind needs a different type of therapy.
Yeah, and also when you take the drugs and the alcohol away, then people start feeling and thinking the stuff that they were medicating, so it can even amp it up in the beginning by taking the drugs and alcohol away. So that's even more reason to work on the underlying stuff there for a while, as we say.
Awesome, Marla, you were about to say?
Yeah, no, that was one of the things that I was going to also mention, that literally when you have two dueling scenarios, learning what it is that you need to do for every individual person is something that I think that, which Scott is pointing out now, there's an automatic patience that we generally don't have. We look at everything like a pill. Yeah. Like, I'm going to take these vitamins and then my vitamin D levels are immediately going to be better because I've taken this supplement. But, it's I'll just say this is to be very interesting. I believe that from what I understand, mental health is the only health issue that we have that we don't really examine where the source. So if you had a kidney issue, you go to your nephrologist. If you had a heart issue, you go to your cardiologist. And the first thing they want to do is, let's get a scan, see what's going on in there. We don't do it with mental health. So the fact that behaviors are created over time, I like where Scott is going, and I want to hear more about letting these things come forward and treating them over time.
Yeah, I mean, it's a process with everyone. And so I think we're all learning that now that we can get people off of drugs, for example, or we could even put them on medication, and that can give us some sort of relief. But in the end, it's the deeper rooted stuff that we have to deal with to make a real life change. And that just takes a while for most people.
Okay. And so in this first step, where does the mindfulness come in? How does that work into this process?
There was actually a study that said that one of the contributing factors to addiction is a lack of mindfulness, which makes a lot of sense, because if you're not aware of your thoughts and feelings, then they kind of control you in a way. So as you become mindful in the beginning of treatment, you start to just observe your thoughts, feel your feelings directly, and that's a really good thing in the beginning, because from there you can take it much deeper. But you can get a lot of relief just from the beginning of, like, when a craving comes up, for example, just observing the thoughts, letting them be there, observing them, letting them fall away. Sometimes that's the first time anyone in treatment even knows that's possible, that you can just observe your thoughts. So we teach it to them right off the bat, that kind of simple.
And it seems like that would kind of also play into kind of how you ended that. Everyone's journey is different. That also sets expectations in the right order, keeping people from thinking that, okay, I'll be done and I'll be well in like 3 weeks. That might not be the case.
Yeah, Marla said it best, and you sound like me, Marla, when you say that. It's like we live in a culture where fix it, immediate, fix it. Like fast food, go and buy this dress, get this pill, in 10 days you can lose all this weight. And this is just not like that. It's just not like that. So we have to kind of uncondition ourselves out of that thinking when it comes to brain differences in mental health and addiction treatment.
Just by observation, Scott, what's interesting? Most things, that's the trick of the mind. Most things aren't like that. I was a fitness professional, and literally people would come to me and say, I need to lose 40 pounds. I have a wedding in 2 months. And they're saying, can we? And I would literally ask them, so let's talk to me right quick. How long did it take you to gain the weight? Oh, it's been about, 8 years. I'm like, but you want me to help you shed 40 pounds?
8 years of lifestyle.
In 8 weeks. So it doesn't mean that change can't happen, but the instant gratification that we've come to know in society doesn't serve us in anything that has to do with improvement and wellness, lasting change.
Well, that's step number one. That's the first tip. So I want you guys to actually keep a track here. We're going to get to tip number 2. The process may very well include one or more setbacks. This is normal, and that's kind of deep. When we come back from this next break, we'll ask Scott to kind of shed some light on that as well. We'll be right back.
When Dave and Marla get together, it's hot.
The Kellerby Center for Recovery is the first primarily mindfulness-based addiction, depression, and anxiety treatment center in the United States. The non-12-step approach is based on founder Scott Kellerby's book, The Natural Rest for Addiction.
The Kiloby Center is located in the beautiful community of Palm Springs, California, and provides 24-hour care for individuals seeking addiction treatment with step-down programs to help clients integrate back into their daily lives.
A recipient of the Joint Commission's Gold Seal of Approval for Behavioral Health Care Accreditation, the Kiloby Center for Recovery is proud to display this symbol of quality that reflects the organization's commitment to providing safe and effective care.
And this is always astonishing, but over 84%, I love this, of clients report complete relief from symptoms of trauma, and 95.7% of clients reported complete relief from anxiety. Over 87% of the Kiloby Center for Recovery's clients report complete recovery from depression, and 100% of the clients who were presented with suicidal thoughts when they first came to the Kiloby Center for Recovery left with no suicidal thoughts at all.
Needless to say, the Kiloby Center for Recovery's mindfulness-based methods are effective.
If you or someone you love suffers from addiction, depression, anxiety, or a dual diagnosis, OCD, or general unhappiness in life, please contact the Kiloby Center for Recovery by calling 866-545-6295 or visit the website kilobycenter.com today.
It's time for the Mental Health Minute with Marla and Dave. It's time for the Mental Health Minute.
When it comes to mental health, many people believe that therapy and self-help aren't necessary when a simple prescription or pill will suffice. The fact is, specific treatment for mental health problems varies depending on the individual and could include medication, therapy, and in many cases both, according to mentalhealth.gov.
Many individuals choose to build and work with a support system during the healing and recovery process. Having a good support system and engaging with trustworthy people are key elements to successfully talking about your own mental health, and is often the first step to helping you heal, grow, and recover.
A support system can include a trained mental health professional, a parent or family member, a teacher, and or a faith leader, or all of the above.
When building a support system, remember, in addition to good advice, look for someone who can assist you in taking action that will help.
This message is brought to you by NAMI San Fernando Valley and Loving Beyond Reason.
David is a thinker.
I never do anything without thinking about it first.
Marla is a feeler.
I basically wear my personality on my sleeve.
But when Marla and Dave get together, it's like a match dancing with a firecracker.
All right, Scott, we are back. Now, I briefly went over the tip number 2, and that is the process the process that you or your loved one might need to go through may very well include one or more setbacks. This is normal. Explain that for us, Scott.
Well, by setback, if it were an addiction treatment, it might be a relapse. We call it resuming use. For something like depression or trauma, some resurgence of it could happen. The reason that I think it's important is if you're looking from the outside, you might think, well, that's just regression, but it's actually part of the process because they learn from that. We learn, especially with mindfulness, we learn what the trigger was, for example, or what the things that they were worried about or concerned about before the relapse. And that gives us a way in to help the person after the setback. So they're part of the process and actually very helpful. We don't want people to set back, but we learn from it and they learn from it and get better often if they stay with it after.
Well, that's something that we actually went through and had to. That was a giant adjustment when our son was dealing with addiction issues before we entered the phase of tackling and understanding his brain difference, and it was very. I think that if I had to be honest, that's the biggest pill I had to swallow because he's doing so well, and then all of a sudden you're feeling like, oh, it's over. Like, okay, we're back. And, I will tell you this, and I'll tell this, I like to share these things. I think that as a parent, someone asked me at one point what this feels like. And what I shared with them is, if you wanted me to be totally honest, the fight that I have is me spending, when you get to know who this child is and they grow up and this is your interaction and this is who you know them to be, and then this happens, you keep trying to go find the person in here. You're going to recover them. You're going to bring them back to what made you comfortable. The relationship was one thing. And so I believe that, that's something that parents have been resonating with me on, because that's where you're diving down the hole trying to get back to what you knew.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
and again, to shed light on what Scott is saying with this tip, even as DJ would go back, he would say, maybe I won't do this. I'll try something that in his mind was a little lighter, and it still wouldn't work out for him. And he would learn, I can't do anything. And finally, he got to a place where he just stopped using whatsoever. And so that speaks to what you're saying.
Yeah, it happens all the time with most of our clients, that they learn from that. And it's not just adjusting behavior, but actually learning how to go into therapeutic or mindfulness techniques that get to the triggers, to the real trauma there. So that's important too. Not just adjusting medication or doing things differently in your life, but reassessing in the therapeutic setting what to do with someone there.
I guess, Scott, I have a question. Is it also helpful for the mind to recover? Like, in other words, is the bounce back, is the recovery part, the falling and getting back up and moving forward, also something that is really instrumental in their psyche, in the person who's trying to recover or get well?
I think it absolutely
like a muscle
is.
memory.
I mean, it depends. Yeah, a muscle memory. Some people who relapse or have a setback, they don't go back to getting help. So that can happen too, where they spiral downward. But we're really talking about people who there's a short setback or some sort of setback, and they learn from it, and then they benefit from that, and it changes things. And so sometimes you have to try it. It's like, well, I'm just going to smoke weed. Okay, let's do that. But then that doesn't work. And then now I'm going to try this. And that, just like you said, that's
exactly what happened.
That's exactly what happened to DJ.
Yeah. And I would think that, they're learning how, like you were saying with the last tip, they suddenly feel all these feelings. So they're learning how to actually just deal with that and not have to use any substance to actually help them get over those feelings. Let's jump to number 3. It's important that family members become educated about mental illness. Family members become educated. It's even more critical that they become part of the healing process. That kind of goes back to what you were talking about last month as well.
Yeah, to educate would be the kinds of things we're talking about now, that relapse is a part of the process, so that the family knows that. But the healing part is different, because that gets into the dynamics between the family, the emotional dynamics, and how someone grew up and internalized those things. And that's more of a therapy thing, and for everybody in the family, because as I said last time, it's the whole family structure that contributes to it's not a blame thing, it's just how we operate. It's the family dynamics that set in place this for some people.
It's the whole pie, not one slice.
It's right, it's a whole pie.
Wow.
For sure. No, that was, I mean, basically he's reiterating, but that again there's another Scottism that David and I have taken to heart. That it really does. It's all of us that need to actually learn to adjust to a process of triggers and healing. So we appreciate you.
Can I say something about that? Here's a really good example real quick, not to mess the time up, but if someone has a setback, if a loved one has a setback, and the first time you respond with a lot of anxiety, but then you have your own therapy or healing to deal with, the second time, if it happens again, you may respond differently, and that is received differently by the person, and that helps them transform.
Everybody has to learn. We're having a great discussion as usual with Scott Kiloby as he goes through Scott's list this week with us. We will be right back. The fun music means what, Marla?
It's poll time.
Good. There we go.
I'm tired of dancing for him, Scott. I can't do it anymore.
Well, you can sing. It works just as fine.
I was, my neck's got a
And you're not just dancing for me. Everyone out there looks forward to seeing your moves.
Okay.
Yeah, get it, girl. Anyway, last week we asked you, according to the American Psychiatric Association, what percentage of Americans feel that the coronavirus pandemic is having a serious impact on their mental health? Your options were 19%, 36%, or 47%. Scott, I see you making that face, so you know what's coming.
And I remember what our guest said last week as well. Let's see if he gets it.
Do I guess now?
Yeah.
My turn.
It's your turn.
In my field, it feels like the 40-something%, but that's just because I'm in this field and I see it a lot. So I'd be anxious to see what the answer is.
Well, what do you think? Are you saying 47?
He's saying 47.
I want to say 47 or the one below it, but I'll stick with 47.
Okay. Well, Scott, you came close to getting the prize, but not quite. Did you win on this one? This is 36%.
And probably it could be a bit higher by now. This information, this data was from the beginning of the pandemic. So now that we're toward the extended demic, as I would say, the extendemic, you never know. It's probably even higher than 47. But anyway, the official answer is 36. Marla, what's the question for next week?
The question for next week is, in the U.S., how many adults with mental illness report that they cannot get treatment even after trying and exhausting all their options? 3 million, 6 million, or 9 million? I'll repeat it. In the United States of America, how many adults with mental illness report that they cannot get treatment even after trying and exhausting all of their options?
3, 6, or 9 million?
I hope it's not 9. I'll say it's 6.
Well, you know what? You had it. You stuck to your hope, but your mind told you that it was probably.
But we won't know until.
We won't know. That's true. That's true. I could be giving it away.
David is like, okay, so you're still at the fair and you threw your dart another time.
Now remember, to get your Scott's list for this week, to call 866-545-6295 and say that you heard about it from Mental Health Mondays. Back to the show. All right, Scott. So
that's hilarious.
I almost gave it away. My exuberance jumped right out there. So the next tip that we were actually talking about says, be aware that their behavior will change. Your loved one's behavior will change, and family members may even have a negative response to some of the changes.
Let me give you one example, is that sometimes when people do very deep therapy or mindfulness, they start to show up a little bit more authentically, maybe speaking their mind a little bit more, or just changing in different ways. And if speaking of family dynamics, if that's not something that you're used to in the family structure, it may take a while to get used to, but that is part of their process. But they can make all sorts of changes that can be new and difficult to adjust to. But that's just an example of one of them.
Yeah, so now in a case like that, excuse me, would you say that then the loved one will learn to not be so blunt, or that just might be the new reality and you have to get used to that as the family?
You mean in terms of responding to the new behavior?
In the way that they speak their mind in a very blunt way that, might come off as rude, might feel rude.
Yeah, it could be. And I would be asking the person a little bit more about their process. If you're engaged in the person's process somewhat, you might know that, for example, they're just learning to be more authentic, and you might see it as they're coming at you when they're actually finding their voice. Mm-hmm. So I would be having a conversation with them instead of assuming that this is just them being, find out a little bit more before you react, maybe.
Okay.
Right. No, I'm totally agreeing, because so many of us when Scott gives tips, the one thing I will say is immediately my brain floods to how relatable all these things are to me, and I begin to I at least take away one that I genuinely practice for the month. And it has really, it continues to change your dynamic, because, to be honest, that's what you've taught me about mindfulness just in the time that we've been interacting, that my consciousness, just being aware, it's not about what I'm thinking, just being aware changes my interaction in every moment, especially with other people. So in other words, the goal is, in my opinion, this is why we love to share you, because the goal is to get everybody to their own mindfulness, because I think that if we can tackle that, and each person can become mindful, you're going to have a more complete understanding picture within your pie. The pie is going to be consistent every time you bake it.
I definitely think so. Yes. And then the whole family gets involved in that. That's what I mean. It's like the whole family starts to become more mindful. It just switches all the dynamics is what it does. And there's a whole healing that can happen.
Yeah, because I'm listening to Scott, and what I'm thinking is when I apply what Scott is saying to me, I no longer take the behavior of the person who is the focus of the issue personal. I'm not offended because it's not about me. It's not. I don't have to, yeah. It's like, okay, and I can receive that because I understand that in me it's landing someplace different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true.
Regardless of where it's coming from in you.
That's very true. Well, this next tip really speaks to where we are with our son with this latest iteration of his dealing with his brain difference. It says, allow your loved one to have autonomy for their new life. The old ways of responding don't apply anymore. Let them make mistakes. And that's where we are with our son. And what I'm finding is his general overall mood stays better much longer, and it stays more consistent because we're not always on him, writing him, did you take your medicine? Did you blah, blah, blah? Did you do this? Now he's doing it all for himself, and things seem to be a little bit smoother.
Right, and the footnote to that is like what you said. Maybe there was a point in time when it wasn't like that, and so you had to step in and just give him some assistance. So the footnote here is it's really about when people are tending to get better, give them the freedom, the autonomy. But of course, if someone has like a med compliance issue, like they're just not able, you may have to still step in and help. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, assess the situation, stand back and let them make mistakes, but also know when you can come in and help when they need that. They may still need that even months or years into the process.
Yeah, we found that we can remind him of things that he needs to do, but still let him do it. And the reason why, even if I have to go back and be honest about some of the behaviors that we as the family had before, it was really because we were afraid of what would happen if he didn't take the medication, if he didn't make sure he did what he was supposed to do. We were really afraid for ourselves.
And our fear was somewhat kind of justified.
It was warranted. I'm not saying that it wasn't.
But, I'm listening to this, and what it reminds me of is, and I think, again, most parents will have this experience. When your kids were little, and they used to want to wear the little pajamas or a Halloween costume in February, and you're like, okay, go get some clothes on. And you're like, oh my God, not that. And you're like, but then again, a parent ultimately says, what's this really hurting? This is their expression. Put on the little tight pajamas, even though you wore those when you were 2 and now you're 6. Fine.
Yeah, that is really tip number 5. So before we recap, and we'll do that in the next segment, but make sure if you want your own list, because I like to keep these lists on the refrigerator. It's very helpful. You have to call 866-545-6295 or email info@KellerbyCenter.com. We shall return after the next break. Don't go anywhere. Having fun.
Bad.
Worthless.
Don't trust them. They'll hurt you. You're worthless.
It's pointless.
When the pain of schizophrenia meets hope, everything can change. Help someone who is struggling by supporting the National Alliance on Mental Illness and be a part of the NAMI effect. Hope starts with you.
It's raw, real, and unfiltered.
Well, I will say that you said having fun, and it is honestly, it's just like an ease. When Scott comes, he brings information, but it's fun. Like, we enjoy it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we appreciate you, Scott. And before we let you give us some parting wisdom, I want to remind everybody, like I did at the end of last segment, to get your own Scott's list that you can put right there on your refrigerator. You have to call 866-545-6295 or email info@KellerbyCenter.com.
Scott, get your tips, because we get ours. You need to get yours and let them know that we sent you.
That's right. Share this show absolutely with your loved ones, with your friends, so that they can actually become familiar. And then call the Kiloby Center so that you can get a little deeper understanding. Scott, give us some parting wisdom.
Well, what comes up for me is to use a cliche or a Michael Jackson song, it starts with the man in the mirror. So when you're in a family where this is going on, if you can start with, what work do I need to do for myself first in this situation? I've seen families heal a lot better with that. Then how can I fix the other person first? If we take care of ourselves first, it's just like the oxygen mask on the airplane. We say put it on yourself first. They say, and then the other person. It's the same thing.
Yeah, and that really takes away some of the issue that we brought up before, because usually when you put that oxygen mask on yourself first, you don't have to panic. And then you can share some of that peaceful feeling with the person that you're dealing with versus a lot of stress that just doesn't help.
And just so you know, Scott, I still have the same goal today that I did the day I met you. If you notice, as we end the show, I'm trying to speak very mindful, in a mindful tone. I've heard that I'm very verbose and I'm loud. I'd like to be mindful. David told me he can't
like that side of you, though. The loud part.
He told me he can't take me to Japan because my tone is just not. They're not having me.
Well, I will tell you this. Every time Scott Kellerby is in the house, it's a great conversation. As usual, make sure you call 866-545-6295 or email info@thekellerbycenter.com. Get your Scott's list. Go deeper. Get into mindfulness for yourself. It really works, and Scott is the master.
And if you're like me, you also need to put on your calendar, show up here the 4th Monday of every month, because we look forward to it. You have to look forward to it too, because this is where you're going to always find your Scott's list.
Scott, thank you so much, buddy. We will see you next month, and we will see you guys next week.